G'day traders, welcome to a wrap up of Wednesday, the 11th of April. So just got the daily chart up here. Like we've been speaking about all week, we've broken down through this support level here, and the sellers have all of a sudden got some real momentum on the downside. So again, approaching today, which is this candle here. Obviously on the Tuesday we had that significant breakdown, so we've still got to stick with the sellers, keeping in mind that after a very strong day where we just trended in one direction like we did on Tuesday, the likelihood of the next day doing the same thing is very low. It doesn't mean the sellers won't be around, it just I just wouldn't expect quite a trending day. And looking at the 5-minute chart here, that's there we go. Looking at the 5-minute chart, that's the sort of thing we had. We did push down overall, you can see, just looking at the overall day before we break it down. But we certainly didn't have the trend like we did on the Tuesday. And even though that daily candle finished up green, you can see the cash market was actually a day where there was more sellers than buyers, and overall we finished down. So take it through. I mean, overall, again, starting the day, certainly got to have the sellers it's top of mind, but bearing in mind it wouldn't be a bad day to take a buy, but just be careful knowing that the sellers are starting to really gain some control. So we started off very much in a bit of a range. At this area here we started to push up, but the ES really held the buyers back. At this stage here, if you look at the Russell broke, and broke convincingly well, like a lot higher, but the ES was very reluctant. It was really trying to stick with the overall daily view, and any chance it was holding those buyers. And as soon as we got a flip round and it started pushing down, along came the sellers, and from there they pushed a lot lower. So this area here, obviously as we start pulling back, there's power points and true fades and potential areas to take this pullback and then get back on the trend and head to the upside. But at this stage here, not interested at all in any sort of pullback. Really looked like a new trade was developing. You get that perception from what the market was doing in this particular morning, and the fact that the dailies are on the downside. So quite dangerous to look at any pullback trades here, and it did quite easily blow through that kind of area there. From there we pushed down lower. We started breaking the cash market lows, but as we did get down to these lows, you can see there's not a lot of pressure in this area. The predictive hasn't crossed down. Like if you want to really see it bust down through this area, I guess what you want to see here, and start to do it, is form a little bit of a shoulder, get the predictive crossing up and then crossing down, and also see the other markets breaking down. So none of the other markets were breaking significantly. So again, even though we were getting the sellers and they were stronger, they didn't have a lot of power on the downside, and they didn't really push that much further past these cash market lows. In the end, they went about 5 ticks beyond that. From there we swung up. I like this area here as far as a true fade. So you can see we've got a decent trend here. We're pulling back, so this is now with the sellers. It's lining up with some resistance through this area here. So I thought 67 was potentially, or even 66.50 to 67 was a good area to buy. Probably more like 66.50. In the end, that particular area didn't work. You can see it's pushed up and broken up through resistance. So even though this area has a lot of potential, that's trading, and sometimes you just get the area completely wrong. And this, hopefully you guys can see, even though it has managed to break up through resistance, it was very unlikely to do that. In most cases, it would stick with the daily trend and hold up at somewhere around here, and then potentially have a go at the lows again. But that didn't eventuate. From there, we came to a 5-minute sell. As far as this is concerned, as a 5-minute sell, it's one that you wouldn't be wrong for taking it. It did have some potential. If you look overall, we're pushing down, pulling back, so it's not really breaking up above this kind of this channel forming down. But the one thing I didn't really like about it is you can see the moving averages pointing up, and also the Russell at this stage had a bit of an uppish look at it too. If you look at the Russell, it really looked like it was a bit of a buy, whereas on this chart it was it was a sell, or was, in my mind, a bit of a 50-50 trade. But certainly if you did look at it and take it, it had some potential. Just one to be careful of. But the thing it did have going in its favour, it was with the daily charts. From there, the predictive swung to the upside here. So quite often you can look at this as a bit of a directional trade. We're pushing up. You've seen this sell fail, sorry, and then you get this predictive crossing the upside and form this bit of a shoulder. It might get some power to push up. So normally it's an area I like to take, but wasn't really interested in this area. mainly because of the fact that, before the Russell, even though it was starting to look uppish here, by the time it got to here, it wasn't pushing any significantly higher. It really seemed like this whole area here was a bit 50-50 and it didn't really want to go up or didn't go down. I didn't have a strong feeling of either way throughout this whole area here. So if that's if that's your thoughts going through your head, you really just need to sit back and wait for the opportunities to come. From there we pushed a bit lower, so obviously that little shoulder as far as pushing higher went a couple of ticks past that little bit of a swing high here, but then quickly turn around and come back to the downside. Coming back down, got a little bit of a 5-minute fade here, so you can see this is basically a new trend starting. We've got to pull back. It hasn't got to its lows yet, so I'll pull back, so retracement, look to catch that retracement and then push down and go for the lows again. So overall, pretty good area. Just the one thing that limit me from taking is the fact that this retracement, counting back from the swing low here, it's only retracing 4 ticks. So this kind of thing, I really want to see about a 6 or 8 tick entry. So would have been potentially better to have your order at 66 or 66.50, catch that retracement, and then look for it to push down lower. But overall, not too bad of an area to sell from. So that's the 5-minute chart, just showing you on the 1-minute chart here. Overall, not a lot of power points in today. Expected a few more power points to be hit. Not a bad day, but a little bit sluggish as far as what I expected. That's for sure. But you can see we start off with this bit of a sideways range, and it really did stick within a range. And before we started the day, we said that 65.50 was potentially a support, and this 1370 was a resistance area, and you get that from looking at the 5-minute charts before we started the day. And those two areas held quite well all the way up until just about lunchtime, and it seemed like it was really channeling. And I guess that comes from yesterday, where we had a massive sell-off, and they're still, I guess, from that sell-off, they're going through a bit of a consolidation period where they just want to take it a bit easy and then decide what they want to do. So it really stuck within a channel. From there, we've got a bit of a shoulder forming here and then a continuation on the downside. Then a pullback. So here's the PowerPoint. This PowerPoint had a lot of value as far as selling off. I think this is probably one of the better PowerPoints of the day, even though it didn't quite work. It went 7 ticks. You can see it pulled back 4, went 7, came close to working, and then pushed higher. But again, if you look at the 5-minute charts, we had this downtrend. We're pulling back. We've got this area here acting as a resistance. It's with the daily chart, so it has a lot going for it. As far as this always has a lot more chance of working than failing. You'll find more of these work than not working. It's a great area, even though it just in the end failed. From there we pushed a little bit higher, then we started coming back down. So the predictive is crossing down in this area here, and you can see a little bit of a rough finish to the afternoon. And I guess to finish off the day, there was certainly some pressure on the downside. It was looking to break these lows and push a bit lower, but you can see it was a bit choppy and bouncing around a little bit, but more of a selling area as opposed to a buy area. That's a wrap up for Wednesday, and we'll speak to you guys soon.